Mark Rogers TV back in the 21st century. How sweet it is. Power is a good thing. And if you run a YouTube channel, it's usable. It's usable. It's something that can certainly come to the benefit of a YouTube channel. If you've got power, if you've got the internet, that seems to be something that is somewhat critical to the business, I have learned over the last couple of days. So welcome back to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And we are back just in time to analyze the coaches poll that was released just a few hours ago, as I understand. I was not aware of that until just minutes ago. And then also to consider that, of course, the Big Ten has released its schedule as well as the ACC in recent days. We will get to our analysis of that. Bright and early on Friday morning, you will get a video post from us on the Clemson ascension to #1, according to the coaches, and also the Clemson schedule breakdown in the ACC. The phone lines are open at 860-325-3687. If there's something that looks a bit odd about the picture quality, the picture depth, and scope of the angle of the lens, it's because my camera's not working. My camera is not working. It comes back from a long trip. It was tucked away nicely in my suitcase, but apparently something got disconnected and my camera is not working. So the picture might be a little grainy, might be a little bit off, might be a little narrow, more so than normal, but we're still here. And just so you can hear me, you probably don't want to or don't need to see me. Glad to see everybody in the live chat. We'll talk top 25 college football, and this is the main focus of our live stream. So I just decided a few minutes ago, I was enjoying a nice afternoon with my two kids and saw one of the social media platforms that the coaches poll was released. I had no idea that it was coming out today. Truth be known, as one of my friends texted me the other day, in talking about the Big Ten schedule, he said, of course, the voice of college football is all over it. And I said, you know what? With everything else going on in life, it's many times difficult to keep up with the breaking news in college football. That's why I rely on you when it comes to the analysis, when it comes to the breakdown, the knowledge of the recent history, the structure, the organization. Hey, I will rely and depend on myself and deliver. But let's also keep in mind that we don't need that call right now. So let's also keep in mind that, yeah, so much going on in my life that I rely on you actually to help me with breaking news. So with all these schedules flying all over the place and the revisions being made, and now the top 25 coaches poll comes out, we learned just a few minutes ago that Greg Russo, the Miami defensive end, possible ACC Defensive Player of the Year last year, I don't know, has opted out for the 2020 season. All right, let's get to your comments. I'm going to run down the top 25 preseason poll, and we'll dive into it and get your comments because I certainly have my perspective on all of it. First and foremost, there are two ways basically to approach a top 25. There are those people who rank the teams preseason based on who they simply think are the best 25 teams in the country in order. That's how I approach it. I don't look at the schedule. I'm not making a prediction on the season. So understand that. That's how I approach it. I'm not making a prediction. I am telling you this team is the best team in the country. This team is the second best team in the country. They are third. They are fourth. They are all the way down to number 25. Also understand that there's nothing magical about 25 teams. That was a selection made actually in 1989 by USA Today. Prior to that, it was the AP and the UPI top 20 poll. So probably, I'm guessing just about all of you were not around for those days at the top 20 poll. It took me a while to get used to top 25. We're going to 25, top 25, even 3 and 4 years later. In the early 90s, I was thinking top 25. It was always the top 20. I was thinking number 23 in the country. It's kind of odd. And prior to that, if you go way back into the, I would say, I don't know when the break was made to go to 20 from 10, but it was the top 10 poll. So it went from 10 to 20 in 1989 to 25. So there's nothing magical about finishing number 25 in the country versus finishing number 26. We might as well put number 26 next to the team that finished with the next number of votes, which in this preseason poll would be Tennessee at number 26, which was Texas to conclude the 2019 season. So there's nothing that drops off the cliff that if you're number 25, you're this good. If you're number 26 and you don't have a number next to your name and you're out of the poll, then you're suddenly down here. There's no distinction. It's like being 22 versus 21 or 11 versus 10 or pick your number, 41 versus 40. There's no distinction made there. So let's understand that, first of all. Nothing magical about the number 25. That doesn't mean those teams are better than everybody else. Yes, obviously the higher ranked you are, typically the better you are, of course. But even at the end of the season, being number 25 versus number 26 should not mean anything, really. It's one spot, just like the difference between 21 and 22. Okay, so let's keep that in mind first and foremost. Nothing magical about 25 teams. Let's also understand, again, let me underline that the way I approach my rankings before games are played is that these are simply my top 25 teams in the country, 1 through 25, in order. I'm not looking at schedule. So the team that I think is the 8th best team in the country could be playing an extremely difficult schedule, and I could project them to finish with a worse record than the team that I think is the 18th best team in the country that's playing an easier, much easier schedule. So I'm not looking at schedules and trying to make projections. When I release my preseason top 25, those are the top 25 teams in the nation. Number 1, then the 2nd best, then the 3rd best, the 4th best. Some people, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, I think there's a bit of flawed in the thinking. That some people project it based on schedule, and they're basically making a prediction. They're not necessarily saying this team is the 5th best team in the country, but based on the factors of the schedule, plus their talent, their personnel, I believe that they're going to finish number 5 in the poll. So it's a prediction or projection. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, who's on the line?
Hey, this is RC in Miami.
Hey, RC, what's going on, man?
Well, interesting day down here in South Florida. Started off with the ACC schedule being released today. I think for the most part, it's a very competitive schedule for the top teams, including Clemson and Notre Dame. I think they'll get some great opportunities to show if they are deserving of their high rankings at this stage. And locally here, I'd like to see us in the top 25, but we're not worthy of that just yet. But when I do look at this schedule, I see right away that Manny Diaz is going to be tested in week 2, having to go up to Louisville against a great Satterfield team that is very well coached. I know they're a little slim on defense, but very impressed with what the ACC was able to do. And unfortunately, we've got some bad news here for if you're a King fan. Our best player just opted out. Greg Rousseau will not be playing college football this year. So we were hoping to get back in the top 25. I think we kind of need him to do that, Mark. But other than that, just a very entertaining day.
KRC, that's quite a bit to take in, as you mentioned off the top. So we've got the ACC schedule release. So we addressed that last week when it was released in regards to the 10 opponents for each team, home and away. So I shot a video and broke down my thoughts on the ACC schedule at that point. I have not seen, so I've been out of the loop, haven't totally been locked in by any stretch of the imagination over the past 5 or 6 days. So I don't know. I have not looked at the calendar schedule to see how it all plays out for the ACC. But you're telling me Miami's got a trip in week 1 to go to Louisville.
In terms of the ACC play, it'll be week 2. I think week 1 we open up here at home on a Thursday night against a very good UAB program that was almost dismissed all entirely not too long ago, and they've been able to maintain a good program, have kids drafted, have kids on NFL rosters. So very, very good program coming in week 1. But in terms of what Manny Diaz is going to have to face in terms of opening up ACC conference play on the road against Louisville with a very well-coached team. Those guys were able to give Notre Dame a good battle for 3 quarters last year on opening night. And again, their Achilles heel is their defense, obviously, but there's no question that Manny's going to be tested very early on. And when you look at the rankings that came out today, I think you've got a good representation from most of the conferences. I was a little surprised to see Texas that high, to be honest with you. And I was kind of surprised to see where Florida was, given the number of players that they've lost on the defensive end. So I wanted to get your thoughts on those. Were my two surprises, pretty much, in terms of being ranked so high.
So to take on this Louisville matchup, first and foremost, it's certainly a game that's going to be an interesting measuring stick for both teams, for both programs this particular season. Miami was much the better team with Jaron Williams firing all sorts of shots downfield against Louisville, in which Miami had its most productive offensive game of the season against a quality opponent. I believe 52-27, that score comes to mind, against Louisville down at Hard Rock last year in a blowout game against, that might have been, well, obviously the Canes beat Virginia as well, but it was amongst the 2 or 3 best wins of the year for Miami in taking on Louisville, a much improved team. As you mentioned, a team that beat an SEC Mississippi State team in a bowl game to finish 8-5, coming off a 2-10 season. So I completely agree with you that Scott Satterfield knows what he's doing, did a great job at App State, gets off and running at Louisville and improves them immensely in 1 year. When you talk about that being a difficult game, that's relatively speaking. We could certainly grab another 20 or 25 teams across the nation that are playing better teams in week 1. So they're not playing a great Louisville team. They're playing a decent team, a team that's got offensive firepower and talent that should be improved defensively. That's difficult for them to get much worse. But yeah, it's a test. It's a challenge. It's a game that Miami, I don't want to say should win, meaning like they just should show up and win, but I believe that they're a slightly better team. And I would think that they would be a 3 or 4 point favorite at Louisville.
Could be that way. I mean, it could end up being as high as 5 or 6, to be honest with you. But based on the history of this current roster that Miami possesses, there's a lot of uncertainty. And even though we've gotten the transfer portal gems to come in on the offensive end and the defensive end, a brand new coordinator, until you go out there, you don't know what you got until you get out there and the bullets are flying and you're able to have these guys impact their respective offenses and defenses in a manner that can put you in position to win a game. And how is Manny Diaz going to be able to win a game in the end? Is he going to make the proper adjustment to have? It goes on and on. So Miami's such an unproven commodity. Even though I'm a huge homer and a huge team fan, I know what's in front of me. I'm just hoping they've been able to turn the tide and everybody has bought in. You like to hear some of the things that the kids are saying, your assistant coach is saying, creating their own bubble, things of that nature. That coach speaks up is all nice. It's all nice to do great in the off season, Mark. But what do you do when the season starts? I mean, to me, it's like you look at the job that Ryan Day has been able to do at Ohio State. Yeah, I understand they have better resources. I understand they were at a different level of recruiting when he inherited that program. But you look at what they've been able to do. They really don't go outside of their process. The process remains the same. Manny Diaz is still trying to create that process, not just on one side of the ball or the other, but as a whole, as a program. So hopefully accountability of players is going to be a huge deal this year and not giving guys second, third, fourth, and fifth chances. But overall, Mark, for me, he's under fire. He's got to be able to produce win games. It's nice to get today. They got a 5-star kid to commit. Those are all great things. But if you don't win, these kids don't stay home and play. I mean, they leave. So when you look at the top 25 and you look at our King Twitter world, everybody's upset. We're at the top. There's no reason for us to be even a top 35 program right now. We we haven't done anything. And losing your best player to start the year, man, that's going to have a huge impact. But when you look at the top 25, Mark, I mentioned that my surprises were Florida and Texas. In the top 10, are there any of those programs that you think their best player on offense or defense will, in the coming days, opt out as well?
Well, quick comment about your team. So yes, you lost your best player, and but also understand that you lost him at a position in which you could afford about as much as any other position on the field with Jalen Phillips and Greg Roche. Roche, Quincy Roche.
Yes.
Losing those two guys or having those two guys on the roster in the starting lineup. I'm not saying that Russo's not a huge loss. He's an enormous loss. But you've got capable, being conservative about it, capable players right there. And you do upgrade most notably at the most important position, not your best player necessarily, but your most important players at quarterback with De'Ara King. So you should have more stable leadership and more sound decision-making, as well as a dynamic dual-threat quarterback at that position. But when we look at the top 10, the first thing that came to mind was I jotted down the top 25, and then I listed where the teams finished last year. I guarantee, RC, that if you took any preseason top 10 and then compared it to, or actually took the postseason top 10, that there are always surprises. There are no surprises in this thing. And that's going to happen anytime you have a collection of multiple votes. You know, these aren't the outliers. This is going to be, you know, once you poll 50 and 60 writers, then what you get is obviously you get the chalk. But there are going to be teams in the top 10 that aren't preseason top 10 teams. It happens every year. It's usually 2 to 3 to 4 teams that weren't in the preseason top 10 that break into the top 10 and finish in the top 10. And we have all 10 teams that were in the top 10 last year in the top 10.
Right, no doubt. The reason why this poll means so much to me, and maybe I'm a little biased coming from a coaching perspective, when it's the coaches poll, especially the first one, that's where guys spent, the last 6-7 months deciphering things, looking at opponents, calling their friends, trying to get some feedback on what to look for, some tendencies, some trends, and they're all working together in one way or the other. And all these networks come together. So that first one, to me, is always somewhat a little bit more meaningful than what the writers might give, because it's coming from that perspective of game plan. All the way back in March and February and January, they've been planning all these things for all this amount of time. So for me, that's got a little bit more validity than a media poll. I don't know if you disagree with that, but.
Well, I don't think the media poll has much validity at all. It has about as much validity as I would hope that this collection of writers has more college football knowledge collectively than if I grabbed 50 of my top viewers. Hopefully, but I'm not necessarily sure about that, because there's one thing that from working in the media, and I did for 9 years, 10 years, and I'm talking about traditional TV, print media, is that these guys are all focused on the program or programs that they cover, and it's typically one program. My experience was in the SEC, and I would show up at the Alabama news conference every week, the Mississippi State, the Ole Miss news conferences, and you would have your Ole Miss beat writer. And that guy didn't know as much about Mississippi State and Alabama football as I did, because he went to everything Ole Miss every day, all the time. And that's all he knew.
Right.
And especially if you're working in television, there's so much preparation for a shoot to video the game and cover the game, go to the post-game news conference and go to the locker room. And, it's for a 3:30 game, you're leaving at 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning, and you're at the stadium and at the game until 9, 10 o'clock at night. Then you're coming back and you're editing. You don't know what happened in college football other than the scores that, and now you've got the internet, you can look things up. But I'm talking about watching football. These guys in some respects, are the least knowledgeable people about college football outside of the teams that they cover. When we're talking, this is the coaches poll. I've got my other knock on that. But when you look at the AP Top 25, those guys cover their teams. They don't cover anybody else and really typically don't know much about what else is going on. These coaches typically don't even vote. They hand it to somebody else in the sports information department and they vote.
Right. Correct. Yeah. I mean, that's the first one normally is the one that they're really involved with based on the opponent and all the stuff that goes on with the networking thing that I mentioned earlier. But once that first one is over, they don't spend any time. Sometimes the GA will be asked to meet with the GA for the sports information department. Things of that nature will happen, but they don't have time for that. They really don't.
No.
They're just focused on their task at hand.
You know, and there might be some direction given later in the season to try to manipulate a certain outcome concerning a team or two, but collectively it's up to the sports information people to determine the coach's top 25. That's what's rather amusing about it.
Mark, take care. Great spending some time with you today.
Thanks, RC. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
You too, my friend. Bye-bye.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Again, I apologize for the camera situation. Our camera is not working. It's all plugged in, all ready to go, but it was on a long, long trip for 5 or 6 days and maybe got jostled around or something happened. So the picture may not be as clear. Camera lens is different, the angle and so forth and so on. So it's not a good thing. So we'll have to look into that. Again, it was just minutes before I set up this live stream that I found out on social media that the coaches have released their top 25 preseason poll, courtesy Amway and USA Today. And so I wanted to comment on that and also get your response. I did see a comment from Luke Walker about Texas A&M being way too high in the poll. Again, I would like you to get the distinction when people say a team's way too high or too low, whether they're taking the schedule into consideration. Do I think that Texas A&M is the 13th best team in the country? Yeah, seems reasonable. Seems pretty reasonable that Texas A&M is about the 13th best team in the country. Are they going to finish 13th in the poll? Well, considering we have yet to find out the completion of the SEC schedule, looking at previous Texas A&M editions in which they had to play last year, the likes of Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Georgia, Clemson. Well, were they better than their record? Yes, they were. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, who's on the line?
NT8, buddy.
Hey, Navy.
I've been talking to you for about 2 weeks about this mess coming down.
The mess concerning the schedules. The schedules?
It started with the ACC going 5-5 in their own conference. Then the SEC has talked about it, but I don't think they've agreed to do anything. Then the Big Ten came out and said, okay, we're going top 10, but Nebraska originally played Purdue for the first game of the year, and now they've cycled that to a week before Thanksgiving. I can't remember what the Thanksgiving game, the game after it or whatever it is, but yeah, I was watching your stuff this morning, and then to see you pop on today, I was like, man, I want you to go to ACC, SEC, Pac-10, 12, 14, whatever it is now, the Big Ten, and it just seems the whole thing is just a complete nightmare, from my opinion. So I just wanted to throw it to you and see if you would do an entire conversation that I've already named 4 of them right there. The Big 12, I have know what the Big 12 is going to do. They've only got, 9 teams?
10.
So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that ball at you and see what you could run into and deal with.
Well, I'm looking for the Nebraska schedule right now. I'm trying to find it on here. I'm running into a bunch of articles, and I hate when there are schedule articles online and they don't give you the schedule. They write paragraphs and paragraphs. Just give me the schedule. So that's what I'm looking at right here. Here we go. Here we go, Navy Thomas. At Iowa. No. Let me back up because, again, it's not loading correctly. At Rutgers.
The one I sent you lately was through Twitter.
Okay, well, I'm looking at it right now. So what you're talking about is, okay, we got Rutgers on the road, Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa on the road, Minnesota, at Ohio State, got a bye week for the Huskers, then at Northwestern, Penn State, another bye week, at Purdue, that's your November 14th game, and then you're talking Michigan State, Thanksgiving. I guess that would be Thanksgiving Day weekend.
Yes, you are correct. My mistake.
It's actually the week before, November 21st. The 28th would be 26th would be Thanksgiving. So actually, they're going to conclude the season before, if everything gets played and nobody gets the virus and everything plays out as scheduled. Everything's going to be played before Thanksgiving.
But if this COVID-19 is ended by then, man, we already know this is going with basketball and volleyball and all the entire nightmare. So I just wanted to throw you the ball, see what you would do with it.
So rest assured, Navy Thomas, I've been out of town, and then we had a power loss for 2 days, and I had so much I wanted to do, but I couldn't. I was running around, going all sorts of towns, trying to look for Wi-Fi yesterday and just couldn't. But I'm going to look at every schedule. We're going to break down all the schedules in every conference, and we'll break down the schedules for as many teams as I can possibly get to. And then I see that where this the coaches poll top 25 was released today. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to strike up a live stream. We'll talk about that. So we'll get to it all.
I saw that this morning while you were in your car, and I was just like, oh my God, you must be going through the heart attack that's going out here too. So, yeah. All right, my friend.
All right, Tom.
I'll be listening.
Appreciate that call.
Talk to you later, buddy.
Thanks, man. Bye. Navy Thomas. Way back when, I saw a video from Navy Thomas riding his motorcycle, talking about MarkRogersTV. Then he showed me that video, and we've been buddies ever since online, and he shoots me all sorts of information and topic tips and subject matters that he wants me to attack, and it's always appreciated. He's been with me for a long, long time. I just posted a comment from NCIS Fanatic 21. He's been watching a long time as well. Always appreciate it, guys. Trying to keep up with these comments as well if I see anything in particular. Obviously, the big talk schedules all over the place, flying all over the place that we got to keep track of and run down ACC and the Big Ten in particular right now because we know calendar dates and opponents. Of course, this top 25 release with Clemson number 1, Ohio State 2, Alabama 3, and on down the line. We'll address that. And Greg Russo, one of the best defensive ends in the country, has opted out for the 2020 season. Leonard Taylor, one of the 3 best defensive tackles in America, had chosen August 6th to be his declaration of his school, and I believe he chose Miami. Somebody can clarify that for me out there. All right. Okay. So as mentioned to RC on the phone, first thing that struck me about this top 25 is that the top 10 from the preseason, the top 10 from the previous postseason is never the same top 10 as the next season. So aside from the slight tweak of Minnesota, who finished number 10 in the final coaches poll in 2019, dropping down to number 18, this is the same top 10. And again, when you get 50 or 60 people together, all the outliers are going to be drowned out by the uniform thinking. And so you're going to get a chalk top 10. but I guarantee it right now, mark it down, there's going to be a team, and most likely 3, that are not in the preseason top 10 that will finish in the top 10. Happens every year. So here's our top 25, and I will take note of what jumps out to me, because I've not really looked at this. Just jotted it down, hit the live stream, let's go, let's do it. So that's what you get out of me, guys, is transparency and immediate response a lot. You don't get a whole lot of preparation here. What comes out of my mouth is because I've watched college football forever. I watch it, read about it. I'm all over it, but I don't prepare for these shows. I'm not one of these people that I don't have the time. I wish I did. I wish I had a staff. I wish I had all sorts of things to prepare. Nope. I see that the top 25's released. Boom. It's 4:50. Boom. I'm doing a live stream at 5 o'clock. So I'm generally looking at this for the first time. Clemson's number 1, Ohio State's number 2. Alabama's number 3, and Georgia's 4. LSU's at number 5. Nothing really of note there. Those teams are all better than Oklahoma at 6. I'm going to have to see something different from Oklahoma to prove to me that they can play with the first 5 teams. Penn State is 7. A lot of people like Penn State this year. I don't entirely know why. They've recruited well. James Franklin's a really good recruiter, really good at running the program. Not a great game coach, James Franklin. Decent. Not a great game coach. In-game coach, James Franklin, no. Sean Clifford's got to get a whole lot better. His performances against the better defenses were not good. He was hidden against Iowa. They relied on the running game and won a defensive struggle. He had a bad game against Minnesota, 3 picks. Woke up a little bit in the 4th quarter when it was too late. Ohio State made him look bad. The Michigan game was a decent game for him, but they jumped out 21-0, and that helped because they relied on the running game. Against Memphis, they ran for a zillion yards. Journey Brown had over 200 yards. Sean Clifford only had to throw 20 passes, 11 for 20. He did not play well against the good defenses in the Big Ten and outside of the conference. And he is maybe the player, the X factor in the Big Ten this year, Sean Clifford. They didn't have good wide receiver play, and they lost their best in KJ Hamler. They lost their best players. I'm going to say their best second-tier players on defense. Of course, Micah Parsons might be the best defensive player in America. He's right up there. So I love Penn State's running backs. That stable of 3 running backs with Kane and with Journey Brown, 7 Ford, tremendous. Florida at 8, Oregon 9, Notre Dame 10. That's about what we expect. Oregon obviously has to break in a new quarterback, most likely Tyler Shooks. I have not heard back on the eligibility of Anthony Brown, who transferred from Boston College. Doesn't it seem like every year we could take the preseason top 25 and see Auburn at 11 and Wisconsin at 12, or right in that range, between 10 and 15. Auburn and Wisconsin. That's just who they are, especially Wisconsin. Wisconsin finishing last season 13th in the country after a very tough Rose Bowl loss that had they won that game, which they should have, they blew it. They basically handed the game to Oregon. Wisconsin would have finished more like 8th or 9th in the country. But they finished number 13 last year. They start this season number 12. Isn't that Wisconsin? Number 13 in the country. That sounds like Wisconsin, where they should be. Texas at 14, Michigan 15. Oklahoma State at 16. A lot of people like the Cowboys to make some noise and most likely play the Sooners in the Big 12 championship game. Of course, that would be a repeat of a regular season game. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Yes, this is Ballard Sports Media. How you doing?
Hey, Ballard. I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Just wanted to talk about the preseason poll rankings that just came out.
Yeah. What hit you?
So I want to get your thoughts. This isn't really how I would do it. I I guess it's all based on what they expect for the teams going into 2020, obviously, because Clemson's at the top. But yet they lost to Natty, and you have the defending champs at 5. I mean, I understand, you know, but at the same time, like, you know, it's kind of weird to see the defending champs. And, I mean, I know, again, this is the coach's school, too. So what are your thoughts on LSU being at 5?
So, Ballard, are you telling me that every national championship should be the preseason number 1 the next year?
Not necessarily. It's just, you know, the champion is ranked so low at the moment is all I'm trying to get at. I mean, you get what I'm saying. Like, for a team that just came off a 15-0 season, and they're at number 5, and you have these teams that they beat last year ranked ahead of them that they had to beat to get to the championship.
Well, let's understand, Ballard, that none of the teams that we're talking about, none of these teams actually in the entire top 25 that play in a Power 5 schedule, so let's take out Cincinnati and UCF, none of them really have anything to worry about if they take care of business. So being number 5, number 7, number 3, number 14, it really is inconsequential right now. So my thought is, if you're going to go that route, Ballard, hear me out, that you got to be consistent. So either you're telling me that the national championship team should be preseason number 1 the next year all the time. And if that's the case, why wouldn't we just take the final poll from the end of last season, and that would start this season as the preseason poll? Why wouldn't we just take last year's poll, that was the final poll, and make that the preseason poll?
Fair point. And then again, you know, at the same time, you got to think this is all based on what they expect these teams to do going into next season.
Sure,
well.
They're different teams to a certain extent. And some of them are much different teams. Other ones are slightly different teams. So I think that the LSU ranking speaks to the depth of the program, the NFL talent, you know, the Jamar Chases and Terrace Marshalls and Derek Stingley's and all the great talent that they have. But it also speaks to that being an outlier of a championship. It wasn't like LSU was only losing 1 or 2 games every year and then they won a national championship. They were losing 3 and 4 games every year, and then boom, they win a national championship. And presto, the Heisman Trophy quarterback with 60 touchdowns is gone. The best running back with 1,500 yards and over 20 touchdowns, gone. Offensive coordinator or the passing game specialist in Joe Brady, gone. So that's what people are looking at there.
Yeah, I can understand that. And, you know, at the same time, and I kind of feel the same way about LSU. I was just, you know, I guess maybe I might have missed something in how they do preseason polls, because normally, if you look at it, I mean, even a team like Alabama and Clemson, but then again, you got to think these teams are consistent all at the same time. So, like, if Bama wins the Natty, right, against Clemson or whoever, right, this is Nick Saban we're talking about. They'll probably put them at number 1 because they know how consistent they can be, and they can probably be just as good the next year, if not better. Same with Clemson, same with Ohio State. You know, so at the same time, like, you know, this is LSU. This is a team that's going to be good. The question is, how good are they going to be? You know?
Yeah, so again, I just don't think number 5's that much of a slap in the face.
Right.
Ballard, let me ask you this question. Do you know if you were watching me at the start of last college football season?
I was, no, not the start of last season, but, you know, when I started my channel, I started finding every, like, sports channel I could.
Yeah. How's your channel doing?
It's going fine.
Good. The only reason I asked that is you may have a whole lot of fun analyzing my top 25 once they start playing games.
Okay.
Because I have a completely different approach than just about anybody I know.
Okay. I'll have to check that out then.
So we'll have some fun with that. Once one game is played, look out for an odd-looking top 25 out of me.
Okay.
Because I base it strictly on the results on the field. I don't care what the perception was going into the season.
Well, yeah, see, I could understand that, because once games start being played, then it all shakes up and changes a whole lot, and you get to see what kind of teams you're dealing with in Georgia and Florida, Ohio State, Penn State, all these teams. Once it starts being played, it's just, and sometimes they could predict maybe a team or two to be, in the top 15, and they end up in the top 10 at the end of the season, and get in the top 10 or whatever. I mean, a lot could happen. So,
absolutely. Does anything else hit you?
No, I don't think so. Thanks for taking my call, and have a good day.
Thanks, Ballard. Have a good one. Mark Rogers TV, voice of college football, breaking down the Amway Coaches Poll Top 25 that was released today. Also, of course, as Navy Thomas pointed out, the schedules are being released and revised, and this is almost a dream for a content creator like myself, because we've been analyzing schedules for 5 or 6 months. Then all of a sudden they got to revise all of them. Not that they're entirely different, but I pretty much have to tear things up and analyze all the schedules again. So over the weekend, this past weekend, I looked at the ACC schedule when we only knew opponents home and away, 5 and 5. And I broke down my thoughts on the SEC schedule, because there had been a decision at that point by the SEC in terms of their schedule format. The actual schedule is yet to be released. And now that the Big Ten has released its schedule a couple days ago, this whole deal with losing power for 48 hours set me behind. But we'll get after the various Power 5 conference schedules and break those down. And we're going to talk Clemson tonight. You won't see it right here, but I'm going to release that video first thing in the morning about Clemson being named a Coaches Poll #1 team and their ACC schedule as well. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, who's on the line.
Hey, Mark, how you doing? It's Dave Knight.
Hey, Dave. How are you?
Hey, I'm hanging in there. And yourself? I saw your early morning preview while you were out driving in the rain.
That was my commute back from work.
Yeah. I was like, man, he's got some good guts going there.
How you doing today?
Hey, I'm fine. Hey, the questions I wanted to ask, I never get too worked up about preseason rankings. They mean nothing. To me, they're almost like 3-star, 4-star, 5-star talent. Until you show it on the field, and everything else goes to the wayside. But I was going to ask you more about your career.
Okay. We may lose a few viewers here, but go right ahead, David.
No. I think it's intriguing. Do you think you'd ever see yourself doing color commentary on college football games?
So I don't necessarily know that I would be the one to do color commentary on college football games, having not been a coach or a player, but they've extended these booths to a lot of 3-person booths. So I can see myself as being a third person there, or being in the studio providing the analysis that I do here. And I could certainly do it a whole lot better if that's what I was doing full time and had the time to be reading and researching and talking to the coaches and players and prepping myself, because I want people to understand out there that with everything that I've got going on, there is basically no preparation in these call-in shows. I think people understand, if they know anything about television/radio and media, that let's take a Colin Cowherd, for example. He's got a staff of 15 people, and he's got all sorts of researchers and writers and producers and help. And he's also preparing for 3 and 4 and 5 hours going into a show where I sit down, I click record and start talking. So that would be nice to be able to have that type of support.
Okay. Let me ask you one more question. I'll let somebody else chime in. Where do you see as far as your show going right now? Is there a projection you like to see it go to, or is it a ceiling involved with it where you could say, man, I've maxed this out, or you just keep rolling?
Well, for as popular as college football is, it's more of a niche topic than, let's say, music. Just about everybody in the world likes music, some form of music. So,
Sure.
for example, I watch these music reactors that they react to videos, and they get huge amounts of views, and their channels grow very quickly. Because for as huge as college football is, and we think it's very popular and it means the world to some of us, well, let's understand, if we grab the average American and started talking college football, for every 100 that we would grab, there would be dozens of them that have no idea that Clemson is Clemson and Michigan's Michigan. They have no idea that college football is even barely played. So there is a ceiling on how popular a channel like this can get, as opposed to, again, music or politics or something like that just about everybody's has some type of interest in.
I got you. Well, I've been thinking about those for a while, and I've missed quite a few of your shows just because of, my work schedule, and I was guessing you probably work 70 to 80 hours when you bring this back in, so it must be tough for you as well. So that's all. I'll let somebody else get on, and thanks again for everything that you do.
I appreciate that, David. You have a great day, and again, I appreciate the support.
Okay, you're welcome. Take care, my man.
Got David on there. He was asking me some questions about my career in the past, which is very nice of him to take an interest. So we'll have that discussion at some point when there's not so much college football news going on. Top 25 released today. Again, we reviewed the top 10 with Notre Dame at 10. Auburn, Wisconsin, Texas A&M, Texas. I've seen some comments about Michigan and Texas being too high at 14 and 15. Texas, Michigan. I don't have an issue with that. Oklahoma State at 16. They would be the highest ranked, non-ranked team from last year at number 16. USC would be the next one at number 17. Minnesota drops to 18. Of course, the Gophers aren't going to get as much respect. They were never ranked until the end of the season. They were never ranked as high as what they had earned. It takes voters a portion of time to be convinced. There's my most intriguing. Luke, you're listening to me right now? Luke Walker, my most intriguing team of 2020. They're the Tar Heels at number 19. Utah at 20, UCF at 21. Utah probably the biggest paper giant of anyone in the 2019 season. Utah had a number of people fooled into thinking that they were a college football playoff contender, but when it was all said and done, who did Utah beat that was any good? BYU, Arizona State. Those were Utah's best wins. They lost to USC at the Coliseum. They got drubbed by Oregon. They got drubbed by Texas. So Utah number 20. And I've got a ton of respect for Kyle Whittingham and how he runs that program. But Utah was definitely, yes, they were smoke and mirrors. Just not at that level good. They were 8-4 good. 8-4 in the Big Ten, good. UCF at 21, of course, the darlings of college football, 2017 and 18 with a 25-game winning streak. UCF at 21, looking to reclaim that top spot among the group of five. Cincinnati's had two great seasons under Luke Fickell, of course, winning bowl games the past 2 years against Boston College and Virginia Tech. Cincinnati's abused the ACC in 2 consecutive bowl games. The Bearcats at 22. Iowa at 23. Rarely do they get the respect. They've had some issues in the offseason concerning player relations. Virginia Tech at 24. We have yet to see the Hokies in a final top 25. I bet it's been since, when was the last time that Virginia Tech finished in the top 25? Justin Fuente's first 2 years included a trip to the ACC championship game in which they only lost by 1 score to Clemson. And they also lost to Oklahoma State in a bowl game to finish 10-4 the year that they lost to Clemson, and also went 9-4. Fuente's first 2 seasons were 9-4, 10-4. And so they finished in the top 25 those 2 seasons in 2016 and 17. So I guess it's just been the last 2 years at 6-7 and 8-5 that Virginia Tech has now finished in the top 25. It just seems like it's been a long time since Virginia Tech's been that good. Iowa State at 25. Don't believe that Iowa State has been a preseason top 25 team since Matt Campbell has lifted that program. So what comes to mind, who's missing? The biggest surprise for me, and it's not a shock, but Tennessee. They're the one team that is receiving a lot of hype, a lot of recognition, with a tremendous offensive line coming back. And that's funny for Tennessee because they were abysmal at that position just 2 years ago. But they've turned it around, recruited well. Trey Smith at offensive line, and the rest of that group is a tremendous offensive line group. Jared Garantano is a starting quarterback coming back. They're loaded with tremendous Ty Chandler and so forth. The freshman kid who had a tremendous bowl game against Indiana. Can't think of his name right this second. Tennessee running back just down the stretch. Tore up Vandy, Kentucky. And then the Indiana performance. He was the bowl game MVP in the Gator. So Tennessee's pretty loaded. They will have a difficult schedule, of course. But they would be the miss for me in the top 25. In terms of names, of course, Florida State, Miami come to mind, but I don't see Florida State. And again, depending on your approach of ranking a top 25, whether you take the schedule into consideration, I do not. I do not think that Florida State is one of the 25 best teams in the country. I think they're close. I think they're in the top 30 to 35 range. But you take them against the schedule, it's going to be very difficult for them to advance in the ACC and play Clemson in a conference championship game, because it could be argued that Florida State is playing the 6 best teams in the conference. They get no light touches. They don't miss anybody good. They've got Clemson and Notre Dame, Miami, Virginia Tech, for whoever else, Louisville, North Carolina. I see Clemson, of course, the standard in the ACC, and you almost have to look at the ACC schedule unlike any other schedule because Clemson is so much better than everyone else. So you have to initially look at who doesn't have to play Clemson. North Carolina is the only contending team that does not have to play Clemson. North Carolina State, coming off a 1-7 season last year in the ACC, they're the only team in the ACC that does not have to play Clemson or Notre Dame. So again, even more so than Oklahoma in the Big 12 and Ohio State in the Big 10, Clemson is just so much better than the rest of the conference until it has yet to be proven otherwise. That's what you have to do in analyzing the ACC schedule. Step number 1 is who doesn't have to play Clemson, because that's an automatic L for everybody else. And then for me, it's Notre Dame. And sure, North Carolina could turn out to be better than Notre Dame. Miami, possibly. Louisville, possibly. Florida State, it could happen. But I believe Notre Dame is the second best team in the conference. And then you've got a struggle between North Carolina and Miami. So that's how I did it in analyzing the ACC schedules. Those were the first few steps. Who doesn't have to play Clemson? Who doesn't have to play Notre Dame? Does anybody not have to play Notre Dame and Clemson? Who doesn't play North Carolina? And on down the line. So Florida State, Miami missed the top 25 preseason. Again, Tennessee would be the biggest surprise to me. TCU's been really good under Gary Patterson, but down 3 of the past 4 years in failing to win 7 games Washington has been a power in the Pac-12 for the past 4 or 5 years. Had a downer against in Chris Peterson's final season, 7-5 regular season before they disposed of Boise State in the Las Vegas Bowl, 38-6. So Washington is missing from the preseason top 25 for the first time in a while. Tennessee's at 26, Boise State 27. So quite a race we could have for the group of 5 New Year's 6 bid between Boise State, UCF, Cincinnati, and Memphis. Arizona State. Arizona State's at number 27. They're intriguing. After North Carolina and Tennessee, for me, I go out west to Arizona State. Interested to see what Herm Edwards and company, Jaden Daniels, do. They're in Tempe, Tucson, Arizona, Tempe, Arizona State. Kentucky, Memphis, Baylor, get votes, Washington, Louisville. There you have it. All right, let's see what else you guys have. David, I appreciate your question. Oh, that would be a heck of a good time. And just to extend on your question there, David, so my background in the business, specifically, I'm building what I'm building here with college football analysis, but 9 years as an anchor, news and sports anchor, sports director for local affiliates. That's where I cut my teeth. Okay, here we go. Pittsburgh sports all the time. You know that we love you, Pittsburgh sports all the time. And yes, do I want to cover some Pitt football? Yes, absolutely I do. And if you would get me somebody who could cover Pitt football and guarantee that we would get views, I would do a Pitt live show, just like we do with Ohio State, Miami, and Florida State. I'm getting sick of people saying the ACC sucks. The SEC isn't that good top to bottom, and I don't understand how the ACC is going to get in one non-conference game since the opponent has to be in area. Okay, think Charlotte. Think Old Dominion. Think Liberty. There you go. Those are going to be your opponents. They're going to be the lesser teams, Georgia State, Georgia Southern for Georgia Tech, the Florida schools, FIU, FAU for, and possibly UCF for Miami, for Florida State. That's what's going to have to happen. Massachusetts for Boston College. They would be the only possibility if we're talking strictly in-state. Now, BC is very close to Connecticut and Rhode Island, but UConn's, of course, not playing football. So to get to your point there, Pitt sports all the time. The ACC has been awful since 2017. Banner year in 2016. I sat right here week after week after week after week and lauded the ACC's play as producing a national champion, as producing the Orange Bowl champion in Florida State, producing a 10-3 bowl record against decent opponents, which they rarely play. They didn't this past season. And playing well in the non-conference schedule regular season. Since then, atrocious. Miami's dropped off. Florida State has dropped off considerably. Louisville dropped off considerably for a couple of years. The second seed in the ACC 2 years ago was Syracuse. Let that sink in. The number 2 seed in the ACC 2 years ago was Syracuse, who beat West Virginia in a bowl game because Will Grier didn't play. West Virginia's 3 of top 4 wide receivers, their left tackle, and Syracuse finished 10-3, and they beat nobody the whole season. Nobody. Look at Syracuse's 2018 season. They finished 10-3. They didn't play or beat anyone. They played one really good opponent outside of Clemson. That was Notre Dame. They got curb stomped 36-3. When Florida State fell off, and to a lesser degree Miami, and North Carolina did as well, and Virginia Tech. The ACC 2017, 18, and 19, awful. The conference, and forgive me here if I'm off by a game, I might be off by a game, 5-19 against Power 5 opponents last year. 5-19, and that's with Clemson beating South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Ohio State. So Clemson basically beat the majority of Power 5 teams for the ACC last year. Everybody else lost. Who won Power 5 games? North Carolina beat South Carolina. Find me another one. Boston College, yes, had their big win against Rutgers. The ACC was awful.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. Press 1 to start the call or 2 to... The call will
Last
start
year.
at the beep.
And the 2 years prior. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Nate the Great, don't be late, a.k.a. Nate Kingston. How are you?
Nate the Great, don't be late, a.k.a. Nate Kingston. Man, I've got to practice that over and over. Get that repetition. Man, I don't know how you spit all that out, Nate. You've got a silver tongue, my friend.
I mean, I get tongue twisters sometimes, but yeah. So I looked at the polls.
Yep.
The ESPN, the coaches poll. So for what I'm seeing, that it makes sense that Clemson's number one because they have great talent and stuff, and plus us in OSU. And I got a little confused on the number 4 spot on Georgia, but no offense, but it's just got a little confused.
Well, what are you confused by?
Well, normally Alabama's third. I forgot about that, but never mind. So I actually my reaction was pretty okay with it, because Michigan's like 15 for 14th right now. The 14th or
Who's 14th? Number 14 is Texas.
okay. In 4 spots below that it's Minnesota, right?
Minnesota's at number 18, correct?
Yeah, I saw Minnesota. I saw Minnesota's ranked on ESPN's poll, so they're ranked 18th. So for some reason, but what was your reaction to the poll? Or
My first reaction.
Your analysis.
My first reaction, Nate, is that, so you have to understand, when you've got 50 and 60 people putting all their opinions together in a vote, you're going to basically, the result is going to be chalk, meaning it's all going to be group think. So what we need to understand is that there are going to be at least 2 or 3 teams outside of the top 10 preseason that will finish in the top 10. That happens every year. 2 to 3 teams, at least, that were not in the preseason top 10 that will finish in the top 10. And they placed all 10 teams, I'll make an exception with Minnesota just barely on the fringe of the top 10 and Notre Dame at number 11 to end last season. They basically took all 10 teams from the postseason top 10 of 2019
Right.
and jumbled them up and made the top 10 for this year. Now, they didn't knowingly do that. Everybody just placed their separate ballots, but that's what it came out to. So that's
I
my
like it a
first
little
thought.
bit, or just you?
Pardon me?
I kind of losing you, Mark. Or it's probably just my phone.
I'm sorry, Nate. That could be my fault. I apologize.
I can hear you.
You got me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Can you hear me okay? That might be my fault, Nate. I apologize.
It's all right,
So my first
I get
thought
a
is,
lot.
again, we're going to have 2 or 3 or 4 teams outside the top 10 preseason that are going to finish in the top 10, number one. Secondly, I believe that those 5 teams, Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU, are the 5 most talented teams in the country. I have little doubt about
true.
that.
Well, I mean, LSU had their Cinderella story. I wouldn't say Cinderella, but like a, there's a story that should be remembered. And I mean, LSU is a good team. I agree with that. If they go playoffs again, I won't be surprised. But I mean, so yeah, that's my reaction of the college football poll, and I was like, okay, that's cool. But thanks, Mark, for the call.
Appreciate it, Nate. Don't be late.
Yeah, Mark.
Nate the Great giving us a call, charming us with his presence. If there's a team in the top 10 that will not finish in the top 10, I believe that team would be either Notre Dame or Florida. And again, this is where we have to start analyzing the schedule. When I put together a preseason top 25, I'm not big on the schedules because I want to present to all of you who I believe are the top 25 teams in the country, regardless of who they play. But most of the people that put together top 25 polls and are giving us their rankings are trying to predict the top 25. So they want to be able to say at the end of the year, hey, look how close I was. I don't try to do that when I put together my top 25. If I put together a top 25 this year, some years I have, some I haven't, I will definitely, as I do each and every year, do a big preview special. We may do it live. Maybe we'll put up the big board, the big whiteboard, and I will run it down in regards to every conference championship games, the winners. And of course, we're in the strange season with just almost entirely conference games. Last year, what did I predict last year? So, I'm a bit embarrassed to admit what I picked in the Big Ten last year. All offseason, I said Wisconsin and Iowa are the 2 best teams in the Western Division. It's not even close. They are clearly the 2 most solid teams in the West. Nobody can touch them. And then late August, I just fell into that Nebraska hype. Nebraska was picked by the Big Ten writers, Big Ten media to win the Western Division. So I picked Ohio State, and yes, just drag my name through the mud. Ohio State, Nebraska in the Big Ten championship game last year. Man, I'm embarrassed about that. I picked Oklahoma and Texas in the Big 12 championship game. Of course, it was Oklahoma-Baylor. I picked Utah-Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game, and it was, Utah and Oregon. In the ACC, I picked Clemson, Virginia. in the SEC, I picked Alabama, Georgia. It was LSU and Georgia. So let's see. Out of the 5 conferences, 10 teams in conference championship game last year. I got 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 of 10. I did much better the year before. Yes, Eric, that's what it has to do with giving people something to talk about. Drum up the hype for college football. People love top 25 polls. People love lists. I want to let everyone know that each and every week on Michigan Podcast, I guest appear every Tuesday, courtesy Steve Dace, Michigan Podcast. It's been a great collaboration for the last 4 weeks. And then what I do is I take the segment that I appear with Steve called the 10-Minute War, in homage of the 10-Year War. The 10-Minute War between Steve and myself, and I post that, as I did this morning, here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. So we're hoping that that blows up big, and please help us do that. Again, it's the 10-Minute War featuring the voice of college football and Steve Dace of Michigan Podcast. And he threw me some trends last week, and one of my response to some trends in college football. Yesterday, he threw at me schedule winners and losers. So once these schedules have been revised, who came out as the big winners and the big losers, and we talked it up. Again, Michigan Podcast, Steve Dace. I appear every Tuesday there. And then I just take that segment, so you can hang out right here at my channel if you'd like, and check it out right here. Or again, I certainly recommend Steve Dace and Michigan Podcast. Does a great job. Phenomenal. So that will be one collaboration there. Keep in mind that every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, we do our Florida State football show. Florida State Seminoles Live every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Still have to work out the details for Ohio State and Miami this week, but I believe Ohio State will be Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time in Miami, 11 a.m. on Saturday. And as always, college football fans of other teams, if you want me to do a live stream dedicated to your team, let me know. And to do it consistently, though, we got to bring numbers. So I have possibly missed a number of comments. If you have anything that you've left us in the live chat that you want to get directly to me, just copy and paste it. Leave it in the comment section of any of the videos. And again, with all this scheduling turmoil and the decisions that have been released in recent days, I'm going to get to it. I got behind the 8 ball with a trip over the long weekend from pretty much Wednesday late until Tuesday, and then 48 hours of nothingness here, blacked out. So we will get to all the schedule releases. We're talking Clemson football tonight. We're going to turn that around for you first thing in the morning, talking Clemson's #1 ranking in the coaches poll and ACC schedule. And going to break down a number of the conference schedules myself, and also going to bring on guests to break down those individual team schedules right here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. You can always help us support the channel by hitting that like button. You can also contribute at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search MarkRogersTV, and of course the Super Chat's available as well. Otherwise, we will see you bright and early on Friday morning with our Clemson look at 2020, and also Ohio State football talk at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. See you then.